keep that in mind. God, he bundles it all up and he says, all of your sin amounts to unfaithfulness to me. And to further emphasize that point, God uses the life of his prophet Hosea to symbolically represent the flagrancy of their sin. And he also uses Hosea's life to symbolically represent the relationship that God has with these sinful people. It's very interesting. God, his ways and thoughts are not like ours. Not only does he call them out about their sin, but he uses the life of his prophet to symbolically represent the condition of the people. And here's what I mean. Turn to chapter 1. This is all a reminder. Turn to chapter 1. We're going to look at the first 3 verses. God does something very unusual by man's standards. In verse 1 of chapter 1, it says, "The word of the Lord which came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, during the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel." And this is what the word that came to Hosea was in verse 2. "When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, 'Go, take to yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord.' So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son." And I didn't do a good job once again. There is underneath this, I put in green. It doesn't mix very well. But if you look at chapter 3, so that's what it should say. So underneath chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, we see where God tells Hosea to go and take a wife who is going to commit adultery. It's a very unusual request. If you flip over to chapter 3, this idea continues. Notice in chapter 3, it says, "Then the Lord said to me," this is God speaking to Hosea, "Go again. Love a woman who is loved by her husband, yet an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes." And this idea of loving raisin cakes has to do with Gentile worship, right? They love idols and they love incorporating these raisin cakes, something that the Gentiles would use in their worship. In verse 2 it says, "So I bought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and an omer and a half of barley. And then I said to her, 'You shall stay with me for many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man. So I also will be toward you.'" And it goes on a few more verses there. The point I'm just trying to have us emerge here with as a reminder is that God is doing 2 things. He, in his usual fashion, is using a prophet to call out the sins of his people. But in this unusual case, he is also using the life of his prophet to symbolize the relationship that God has with his people. God is accusing his people of being sinful, and by being sinful, he is calling them harlots, and he tells his prophet to go marry a harlot. And in their relationship, their marriage or their marital relationship is symbolic of or reflects the relationship that God has with his people. His wife cheats on him, and God is saying, "My people are cheating on me through sin." Does that make sense? It's unusual, but this is what God is doing. Okay? So this is what we've covered so far. So now, this morning, that I'm just sort of laid all of that out. And so this morning, I'm hoping that we can look at chapters 5 through 10. And I'm going to ask for some help to read chapters 5 through 10, but I want to give you a heads up to help orient your mind about what we're going to see in chapters 5 through 10. Beginning in chapter 4, God starts to make his case against his people. And chapters 5 through 10, God continues to make his case against his people. So if you imagine that, this is 6 chapters of God just laying it all out, saying, this is what you've done wrong, this is what you've done wrong, this is what you've done wrong, for 6 chapters. Now, there are 14 chapters total in the book of Hosea, and Lord willing, we will look at chapters 11 through 14 next week, and we'll close that out, and then again, and then the week after that, Brother Steve will then change our total focus to the book of Micah. But let's just see what God has to say to the people Israel. So I'm going to start us out. I've got them populated up on the screen. I'm going to start us out with chapter 5. But I'm going to need someone to volunteer, if you're willing, to read the first 7 verses of chapter 6. I know it's hard to see in yellow there. In chapter 7, we've got a few verses, all of chapter 8, selected verses of chapter 9, and then all of chapter 10. So anyone willing to read? Mark Boozer will be one reader. Melissa will be another. Jerry, all right. We have the Boozer team. That's 4. I need 2 more. 2 more. Jared will be 5. I need 1 more. All right. Thank you. All right. We got the Travers and the Boozers working together. All right. So actually, so I said 1, 2. So I think I got 6 of you now. So actually, I won't read anything. So Mark, I think I saw your hand first. If you don't mind, read all of chapter 5. And again, guys, as Mark is reading, just pay attention to the case that God is making against his people. All right, very good there, Mark. So I just want to ask you all a couple questions before we move to the next passage. And by the way, I should have said this before Mark started reading. So you heard probably Mark say a word in there a few times, Ephraim or Ephraim. I should have said, even though that was a tribe, in this context, I believe God was using that tribe Ephraim and Israel, the northern kingdom, interchangeably. So anywhere that you see Ephraim, he's still just talking about the nation Israel, and I should have said that. Does this sound familiar so far? I mean, from what God has kind of been called, what we've read so far about what God has called out, what jumped out at you just quickly? What is God accusing his people of? Pick out a verse and see and let us all know what you see or what you hear God accusing the people of. Pursuing idols. What verse do you see that in, Laura? All right, so very good. So pursuing idols, idolatry, we talked about that. Anything else that we see God accusing his people of?
Chapter 2 says revolters.
Verse 2 says revolters, very good. What else does he, revolters have gone deep in depravity, it says, right? What else does God call them out about? Very good. And the spirit of harlotry is within them. Mark's version was the spirit of prostitution, I think what you read in verse 4 is in them. And again, anything else you see? By the way, what do you make of verse 6, where it says, my version reads this way, they, speaking of the nation, they will go with their flocks and herds to seek the Lord, but they will not find him. He has withdrawn from them. What does that mean, you think? That they will go with their herds and flocks to seek the Lord, but they will not find him. What does that mean, Joe? Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting idea, and that's true. I mean, yes, but they really have sort of lost something about the knowledge as well in terms of their intimacy or relationship with God. But this idea that they will go with their flocks and herds, I believe. Oh, go ahead.
They still like sacrificing in the temple.
Yes.
But yet God doesn't acknowledge it because they're also sacrificing on the hills to everyone else.
That's it, Juanita, that you said it perfectly. That's very good. So what Sister Juanita is rightly pointing out is that this reference to that they will go with their flocks and herds, I mean, again, to sacrifice to God in the context of worship. They're going to do that to seek the Lord, but they will not find him. Juanita goes on to say that part of the problem here, because remember, idolatry is one of their issues. They're still sacrificing to the God, but they're commingling that with sacrificing or doing other worship activities with false gods. All right, very good. So I think we got a sense of what's going on here. I just want to point out one more thing, and then we'll move to chapter 6. Look at verse 13. Verse 13, mine reads this way: when Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah his wound, then Ephraim went to Assyria and sent to King Jareb, but he is unable to heal you or to cure you of your wound. For I will be like a lion to Ephraim, and like a young lion to the house of Judah. Even I will tear to pieces and go away. I will carry away, and there will be none to deliver. And so, again, a lot of this is poetic language, but this idea of going to Assyria and going to this other king, God, I believe, is calling out the nation in the sense that they put their trust and faith in political alliances with other nations, thinking that they could possibly be protected from them. And God says, you know what? No. In verse 14, I'm going to be like a lion to you, and I'm going to tear you to pieces, and I'm going to carry you away somewhere, and no one can deliver you. All right, I want you to see that. All right, let's keep going. Mark, Melissa, I think you were next. We're going to move into chapter 6, and for the sake of time, we'll just look at the first 7 verses of chapter 6, please.
Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us that he may heal us. He has struck us down, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, he will revive us. On the 3rd day, he will raise us up, that we may live before him. Let us press on to know the Lord. His going out is sure as the dawn. He will come to us as the showers, as the spring rains that water the earth.
And I'm going to interrupt you just one second. These first 3 verses that Melissa just read appear to be the nation now sort of responding to God. God says, I'm going to do this to you. And so now they say in verse 1, come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, but he will heal us. Right? He has wounded us, but he will bandage us, and so on and so forth. So this is the nation's response to God. But then God comes back in verses 4 through 7. And what does he say, Melissa?
What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes early away. Therefore, I have hewn them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. And like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessly with me.
Interesting. So what do you guys make of this now? What do you make of this? The nation comes back and they're essentially saying, you know what? God is going to see us through all of this. But what is God's divine response in verses 4 through 7? And specifically, what is the analogy that he uses to describe their love for him? Well, even before that, what did you say, Jerry? What verse is that, Jerry? Verse 4. Read that for us, Melissa, one more time. Read verse 4. This is what God says, how he sees their love for him. Verse 4.
What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes early away.
All right, that would be sort of a temporary situation, right? You know how in certain mornings you might get dew, but then after a period of time it'll burn off, it'll go away. God says that's how your love or loyalty is to me, right? He's still calling them out. Jerry, I think you're next, chapter 7. I know it's hard to see, and I didn't do good with the colors. Chapter 7, Jerry, what I'd like for you to do is 1 through 4, and then drop down 7 to 13. Very good. All right, good job. So again, just God continues. I mean, some of this is different ways to make the same point, but God continues to kind of hammer them about the way that, first of all, you know, in verse 1, it says they deal falsely, for one thing. It also goes on to say that, verse 2, and they do not consider in their hearts that I remember all their wickedness. We see here again, he calls them adulterers. And even though that was one issue, I again want to remind us that that is sort of a catch-all phrase that God uses to describe all of their sin. God sees or regards their sin as his people cheating on him. Right? He also, too, that was in the first 4 verses. When you drop down to verse 7 and beyond, I want to just call out a couple things that Jerry read in there. He says in verse 7, all of them are like a hot oven, and they consume their rulers, and their kings have fallen. None of them calls on me. Verse 8 is interesting. He says, Ephraim mixes himself with the nations. Here's another reference to them kind of relying on their alliances with other nations or with other people, Gentiles, in fact. It says, Ephraim mixes himself with the nations. Ephraim has become a cake not turned. What do you think that means? That's poetic. What do you think that means? What do you think, Khari?
Going back to earlier, it talks about the raisin cakes, I believe.
Yes.
I believe that's making reference to the cakes
Yes.
being cooked
Yes.
correctly.
Yes, sir.
And the bottom of it is just going to be burned up and not be no good.
Yes, and the side that's not turned will not be developed, right? I mean, you're exactly right. So both are true, right? I mean, consider when you make a pancake, right? If you just leave it on one side and you don't turn it, right, it's incomplete. It's burned on one side, but incomplete on the other side, right? And so again, that's kind of the point that this is the imagery that God is using as he's describing his people, again, for emphasis. Verse 8, Ephraim mixes himself with the nations. Ephraim has become a cake not turned. When you drop down there, verse 10, though the pride of Israel testifies against him, yet they have neither returned to the Lord their God, nor have they sought him for all of this. Right? So he says, and somewhere in here it says that, it's verse 11. So Ephraim has become like a silly dove without sense. Now here's the political alliances, relying on other nations for protection as if that will somehow safeguard them against God. They call to Egypt. They go to Assyria. God says, but when they go, I will spread my net over them and I will bring them down like the birds of the sky. All right, Joe, you got a comment? Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for that. Laura, I think you're up next. All right, so Laura, you got all of chapter 8. You got a long chapter there, 14 verses. All right, you did a great job there. So what do you hear God saying in chapter 8? As he's continuing to make his case against his people, anything jump out at you here? Anything jump out at you? Do you see in the beginning parts there, particularly around verses 4 and 5, how, again, God calls them out for idolatry, right? Sister Laura reads in verse 4, they have set up, first of all, and notice this, they have set up kings, but not by me. They have appointed princes, but I did not know it, God says, right? So he's calling them out, not just here, but in other places, if you recall. He calls them out about the priests and their prophets and the corruption of the leadership and how the leadership of the people also led them astray as well. Brother John Boozer made, I guess it was 3 weeks ago, because that's the last time we're together, but Brother John Boozer made an interesting point. There was a problem with many things, including the corruption of the leadership and the influence that that corruption had on the people. And Brother John said, yeah, and I'm paraphrasing, you said something like, well, yes, that's true, but the people themselves were still without excuse, is what you said. In other words, everyone had their own accountability. And you're exactly right. Both points are true. Leadership in general, and we saw that during the period of the divided kingdom. If the leader was spiritually sound, the people tended to do pretty good. If the leader was spiritually corrupt, the nation didn't do so good. So the principles of leadership and the influence that leadership can have on people is real. But to Brother John's point, that still doesn't serve as an excuse or crutch. We all still bear our own responsibility. And for that reason, when God punished the nation, he didn't just sweep the leaders away. All of the nation went into exile. Everyone was punished, right? To your points. I just want to make sure we saw the way that God calls out the leadership. He calls out idolatry in verses 4 and 5 once again. And notice verse 11. It says, since Ephraim has multiplied altars for sin, right? Now they're sacrificing to everybody, not just to the true God, but to everybody. They have multiplied altars for sin. They have become altars of sinning for him. In other words, their instruments of worship have become instruments of sin for them in terms of their idolatry. It's really pretty interesting, really pretty interesting. That's chapter 8, where I think we're going to make it. Who? 9, so I had Juanita and Jared. So Jared, you'll do 9 for us, and you see how it's broken up on the screen, right? And then Juanita, we'll have you do 10, please. Yep, starting with verse 1.
Do not rejoice, O Israel, with exultation like the nations, for you have played the harlot, forsaking your God. You have won harlot's earnings on every threshing floor. Verse 3. They will not remain in the Lord's land, but Ephraim will return to Egypt, and in Assyria they will eat unclean food. They will not pour out drink offerings of wine to the Lord. Their sacrifices will not please him. Their bread will be like mourner's bread. All who eat of it will be defiled, for their bread will be for themselves alone. It will not enter the house of the Lord. Verse 7. The days of punishment have come. The days of retribution have come. Let Israel know this. The prophet is a fool. The inspired man is demented. Because of the grossness of your iniquity, and because your hostility is so great. Ephraim was a watchman with my God, a prophet. Yet the snare of a birdcatcher is in all his ways, and there is only hostility in the house of his God. Verse 15. All their evil is at Gilgal. Indeed, I came to hate them. Because of the wickedness of their deeds, I will drive them out of my house. I will love them no more. All their princes are rebels. Ephraim is stricken. Their root is dried up. They will bear no fruit. Even though they bear children, I will slay the precious ones of their womb. My God will cast them away because they have not listened to him. They will be wanderers among the nations.
Well done. Sister Juanita's going to close us out with chapter 10. Does God sound pleased with his people? Does he sound happy with them? No, he doesn't. And he's going on and on about it, and he's letting them know that not only is he unhappy, but he intends to punish them. How does he continue? Please read all of chapter 10.